Chapter 6 The Meeting. During the 1943 baseball season, Branch Rickey announced to the baseball world that his far-reaching scouting system just might come up with the name of a qualified black ball player, and that he might just sign him up. Rickey made it sound like it would be an accident, something that couldn't be avoided, but he was hiding the truth. He had already decided to find the best black ball player in the country. Rickey was then going to sign him and make him the first black to play Major League Baseball. Rickey was doing it for two simple reasons, simple at least to him. First, he felt it was time to start doing what was right. And second, he thought it would help the Dodgers win the pennant. He was right on both counts. He told none of his scouts his real plans. He told them he was going to form another, better league for black players, the United States League. The scouts were ordered to look for players for the Dodger team, the Brooklyn Brown Dodgers. Rickey wanted a player who could run well, had a good throwing arm, and could hit with power. But that was only part of what Rickey was looking for. He was equally concerned about the player's personality, background, intelligence, and desire to succeed. Just being the best baseball player wasn't good enough. Rickey knew what the man would have to put up with. He didn't want someone who was so hot-headed he might punch someone in the nose right away, even if the other guy deserved it. But Rickey also needed someone with enough drive and determination to manage to hold his head up high in spite of the abuse. Rickey needed someone who could play ball and take the heat, someone who wouldn't fold under the pressure from the fans, the sports writers, opposing players, and his own teammates. The first black player in organized baseball needed plenty of self-control. He had to avoid reacting to his tormentors. As if all this wasn't enough, Rickey also wanted someone who would set a good example off the field, a non-smoker and a non-drinker, a family man, he hoped, with a college education. There were many players in the Negro Leagues who were considered good enough to play in the major leagues. Most, however, had to be crossed off the list for one reason or another. Some were simply too old. Rickey didn't want anyone past 30. Great as they once were, they were now past their prime. Rickey felt many of the young black players lacked the maturity to handle what would be a tough situation. Some were eliminated because the Dodger scouts felt they wouldn't be able to hit major league pitching. By the spring of 1945, Rickey's search for a black player was in full swing. His scouts were going to Negro League games all over the country. Rickey eagerly awaited each report. After a while, one name kept popping up. By that summer, Jackie Robinson was being carefully considered by the shrewd Dodger general manager. Actually, Rickey wanted to know the names of 5 or 6 of the best black ball players. He was certain that once the color line was broken, other teams would follow. He wanted to be able to sign up the top black players right away, but he needed to know the one outstanding player who would be able to pave the way for the rest. 3 of his scouts were particularly excited about Jackie. One said he was the best bunter he'd ever seen. Another said he was the best two-strike hitter in baseball, white or black, and the only question was Jackie's throwing arm. One scout suggested he be switched to second base, where the throw to first was shorter. Rickey sent someone to watch every game. Jackie played for a month, paying particular attention to his arm. The report came back that Jackie could play second base with any major league club. This was enough to convince Rickey to look into what kind of person Jackie Robinson was. He was hoping to find a player with a college education. Jackie was qualified on that score. Ricky contacted friends in California who checked into Jackie's years in Pasadena and UCLA. Their reports said that Jackie had a reputation for being arrogant and cocky. Some said his number one trouble was that he would argue with and talk back to white officials and players. But Ricky knew the only reason these characteristics were considered faults was because Robinson was black. He had done wrongly only because he was colored. If he had been white, he would have been spirited, an aggressive competitor. Because he was black, his aggressiveness was considered offensive by some people. But not me, Ricky said. Ricky wanted a mature person, and the 26-year-old Robinson was that. Ricky was also satisfied that he had the necessary drive and determination. It showed in everything he did on and off the field. Ricky's investigation was thorough, and he was satisfied he had his man. Ricky sent Clyde Sukeforth, one of his top scouts, to watch Robinson play with the Monarchs. He wanted Sukeforth to convince Jackie to come back and meet with him. Ricky still had nagging worries about Jackie's arm and wanted Sukeforth to take a look at it by watching Jackie go to the right and make the long throw to first. Sukeforth was sworn to absolute secrecy, but even he didn't know the truth. He thought the secrecy was about scouting players for Ricky's new Negro League. It was late August when Sukeforth arrived in Chicago. The Kansas City Monarchs were playing the Chicago American Giants in Comiskey Park. At first, Jackie didn't believe Sukeforth was a scout for the Dodgers. It was hard to believe that someone would come all the way from New York just to see him play. Sukeforth couldn't see him throw, and Jackie wasn't even going to play that day. Sukeforth tried to convince Jackie to come back with him to New York. He told Jackie that Branch Rickey wanted to meet with him tomorrow. At first, Jackie didn't want to leave the team. Sukeforth argued that Jackie wasn't playing anyway because of his shoulder injury, so he wouldn't be hurting anyone by his absence, and the Dodgers would be taking care of all expenses. Finally, Sukeforth convinced the suspicious Robinson to come back with him. Jackie was worried about his salary. He was making $100 a week, and he didn't want to risk losing it because of some wild goose chase to Brooklyn. Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey met in Ricky's office the morning of August 28, 1945. The first thing that the Dodgers general manager wanted to know was if Jackie had a girlfriend. Jackie was surprised to be asked something so personal so quickly into their talk. After Jackie told Ricky that he was engaged, Ricky wanted to know all about Rachel. Then he switched topics. What kind of agreements did Jackie have with the Kansas City Monarchs? Did he have a contract? How did he get paid? Then Ricky told Jackie why he wanted to meet him. It wasn't because of any new Negro League. I sent for you because I'm interested in having you as a candidate in the Brooklyn National League Club. I think you can play in the major leagues. Jackie was surprised, but not completely. He had suspected that the time was coming when something like this would happen. A top Dodger scout coming to see him made him think something important was going on. Now he knew what it was. Ricky said he wasn't worried about Jackie's baseball ability. He was concerned with the rest. He and Jackie would be fighting alone. The other owners would be against them, and so would most of the players. Ricky wanted Jackie to understand how much courage would be required. He began pacing the room, dramatizing the situations Jackie would find himself in. You're up at the plate, inside the fastball that's coming right for your head. The next thing you know, you're eating dirt. What will you do? Or you're playing second and a guy hits a line drive to the right. He rounds first, stretching it into a double. The throw comes in and the play is close. The collision brings the crowd to its feet. The other players jump up and start screaming at you. Do you scream back? Hit him? What happens when you're playing shortstop and the guy on first takes off trying to steal second? He's coming in spike first and he cuts your leg, and you know he did it on purpose. Then the guy gets up and looks at you and says, "How do you like that, nigger boy?" Ricky never stood still, pacing around the room, puffing his cigar and sometimes coming so close their faces were only inches apart. Jackie had heard it all before, and he knew what he'd like to do. He knew what he'd done in the past. In the past, he'd made it clear you didn't mess with Jackie Robinson. Jackie was surprised by how much Ricky knew about his past. They talked about his years at UCLA. Ricky said he heard about Jackie's reputation for having a short fuse, especially when it had anything to do with the color of his skin. He sympathized with Jackie and told him that's why he was bringing it up, because Jackie was black and stood up for himself. He developed a reputation as having a short temper. Ricky told Jackie that he understood that if Jackie were white, the same critics would just smile and say he was competitive. Ricky was worried about whether or not Jackie could walk away from the abuse that was sure to come his way. Ricky believed that fighting back would work against Jackie. It would be just what the people who didn't want baseball to be integrated hoped would happen. The first time Jackie went out to the mound because a pitcher threw right at him, the first time there was a scuffle on the base paths, the first time he was thrown out of a game over a call, it would all be over. His playing ability would get lost in the stories about the arguments, the flare-ups, the fistfights. It wasn't working, people would say. Blacks and whites just don't belong together. Blacks just aren't mature enough. And the playing field wasn't the only place Ricky saw trouble.